We ready? Okay, thank you. As Tony mentioned, my name is Jarom McDonald. I direct an office here at BYU titled the Office of Digital Humanities. And Tony asked me if I would just give a very quick presentation. I've called it the Digital Humanities at BYU. And in fact, I've called it a short survey. I wish I did have the ability to do some more of these deep dives, but I definitely don't want to keep anybody from lunch. And I'm sure that you'll be tired of me after my short survey is over. So I'm going to start with myself, actually. This is me when I was a child. And the reasons why I'm starting with myself are twofold. One is because F. Scott Fitzgerald once said, it's my material and that's all I had to deal with. And I take anything that F. Scott Fitzgerald says seriously. More importantly, though, my 11-year-old son gave me some advice a few weeks ago, just in general. He came home from 6th grade and he said, Dad, I have a love-hate relationship with figurative language. But then he went on to say, but I really do like making a metaphor of myself. And so as we sat there and we talked about what figurative language really can do, I stuck on that phrase, making a metaphor of yourself. So I'm going to make a metaphor of myself a little bit today. And I'm going to take myself when I was younger. I'm actually going to go when I was 5 years old. We happened to get our first computer in our house. My father was very much involved in some of the early days of computing, especially the early days of networking. He was part of some of the committees that brought the internet together. He's part of WestNet in the early 1970s and into the 80s and so forth. And he wrote some of the first internet clients that were used here at BYU and so forth. And so he brought home a computer when I was 5 years old and said, you know what, guys, you're going to have to start learning how to do this because I guarantee you in 30 years this is what the world's going to be. And so I went through my childhood life having the digital always present in the things that I would do. So the first time when I was in 5th or 6th grade myself, I turned in a report that I typed up and printed out, and my teachers gave me compliments on how well I could use a typewriter. I kind of laughed at them a little bit. And of course, when I was 11 years old and I got my first email address and started playing around with some of the social media, proto-social media sites that they had in the mid-'80s, I had to learn a lot about all of the things that our kids and our teenagers are learning about today. So I was a digital native before there were digital natives. And so given this upbringing, of course, when I went off to college, I became an English major. And in fact, I tell my father that I purposefully chose English because this is about as far away from technology as I could get. Unfortunately for me, of course, no, but fortunately as well, as I was finishing up my English degree and still involved in, of course, a lot of technology. This was the early 90s, and so the internet, or excuse me, the World Wide Web was just starting to emerge on the cultural scene. I had about a year left, and I only had one English class left to take, and I thought to myself, what on earth am I going to do with all of my time? And one of my English professors said, well, there's a program here at BYU. It's a minor, and in fact, it's two separate minors. The program's called the CHUM program, and they have a minor in computers and humanities, and they have a second minor in language and computers. And I'd taken a couple of linguistics classes for other reasons, and so I looked and I thought, oh, you know what? I could fill my schedule up over the next 2 semesters with a few computing classes, come out with a minor, and be able to have this additional line that I could put on my applications when I was applying to graduate school. Because, of course, as an English major, the only thing I was focused on was graduate school. So I took a few of our CHUM classes. I took a class in basic web programming. I took a class in print publishing. I took a class on database design. And I thought to myself, well, this is really nice. Now I know a little bit more about what my father did and what he continues to do. And I'm going to put that aside. And I'm going to go off to the University of Maryland and earn my PhD and just become the world's greatest F. Scott Fitzgerald scholar. When I got to Maryland, Maryland had just received a $2 million grant jointly funded by the NEH and the NSF to found the Maryland Institute for Technology and the Humanities. And needing a way to fund my studies, I went and knocked on the director's door, and I mentioned I'd had this minor when I was an undergraduate student, and I said, I know a little bit about computers. I've got a few computing skills, and so they hired me as a graduate assistant there, and asked me to teach some of the classes that they were doing, and so forth. Long story, to make a very, very, very long story short, by the time that I was finishing up my degree, I realized that personally, because remember that I'm making myself a metaphor, I was much more interested in the technology side of the technology and the humanities, and I wondered to myself, are there ways that I can help other students who may have similar types of journeys ahead of them to be able to find, identify, and develop those skills. I looked at where I'd come from and where I'd ended up, and I really saw that rather than having any one particular interest or any one particular skill set, I was really kind of the product of a series of intersections of different interests, different skills, and different experiences. Now, you've heard a lot over the past couple days about the idea of humanities plus being able to work at the intersection of a lot of different areas. And so when I sit here as a director of the Office of Digital Humanities and trying to define what oh, sorry, I skipped over this slide when I was talking about, I was going to talk about intersections there, I'm sorry. I'll continue to skip over it. But when we talk about trying to define what we mean when we say digital humanities, either at BYU or in the larger academic community, because it's a term that's very present in a lot of different disciplines, language, literature, culture, and so forth. I think that phrase, the intersection, is incredibly important, that we see the digital humanities as work at the intersection of technology and the humanities. And I don't know if you've seen this or not. I know that Scott Springer is very fond of using this slide, and other people in the Humanities Plus who are doing Humanities Plus work are interested in it as well. Steve Jobs was once quoted as saying it's the intersection of technology and the liberal arts, the humanities, that makes our hearts sing. Now, I don't think Steve Jobs personally understood the humanities very well, because he then went on to talk about how the way that comes out is by making the iPad very easy and simple to use, and the humanities are anything but easy and simple. But it sure makes a nice screenshot. More importantly, I think it continues on with the metaphor of kind of laying out in the survey as to what we do in the digital humanities. There was a book that was published a couple of years ago. It was edited by Matthew Gold, who's I think he's at NYU, if I'm not mistaken. It's called Debates in the Digital Humanities, in which he looks at the academic field across all areas: history, cultural studies, language studies, various literary studies, comparative as well as American and British and so forth. And he identified a series of critical confrontations that are starting to happen around how technology and the traditional humanities are kind of coming into conversation with each other. And it's a wonderful book, and it's actually published open access, and so anyone can go and see it. I want to focus on just a couple of these debates as a way to kind of survey what we're doing at BYU. One of them has to do with the idea of the big tent. It's very common, if those of you who've come across people who work in the digital humanities may often talk about the big tent, and that they're trying to build the idea that anyone who's anywhere in the humanities doing anything with technology has space under this label of the big tent. But rather than actually being a pavilion, what's ended up happening is it's become more like a circus, where everyone is trying to get their spot in the center ring and relegate everyone else to the sideshow. And so here at BYU, as we think about where we really fit in the big tent of the digital humanities, we're trying very hard to concentrate on the things that we have historically done quite well. So for example, and these are just quick, very quick, almost shotgun examples. We have a very storied history of working with corpora here at BYU. This is both for linguistic use as well as for literary use. Going back to the 1970s and 80s, people such as Randall Jones and Stephen Sondrup and many others have built large-scale corpora in German and in English and in Japanese and in Russian to start to investigate how computational and quantitative approaches might be able to give us answers as well as give us new questions that we hadn't really thought to investigate before. And that sort of work is really quite important and significant here at BYU. Professor Mark Davies, for example, in the linguistics department, has created a series of corpora. You can find it at corpus.byu.edu. He has corpora that are millions and millions, if not billions of words in American English, historical American English, British English, Portuguese, Spanish, and he's, more importantly, he's created an interface that allows researchers from any field to come in and to attach computational analysis to the type of qualitative questions that might be important to them, whether it's historical linguistics, whether it's literary studies, and so forth. We also have some faculty members. Dill Parkinson, for example, works on an Arabic corpus of various dialects of Arabic newspapers and so forth. We have a Hebrew corpus. I was talking with Scott Springer earlier today. He said, hey, why aren't we doing any corpora work with French? He said no one's really interested in that, but wouldn't it be interesting to start to use some of these tools that have been developed here at BYU and give our students the ability to look more at what corpora studies might lend to their study of the humanities. Another just kind of shotgun thing I wanted to mention here at BYU, we're very much interested in the digital humanities and natural language processing and text mining. And we do this not just in our college, but with in collaboration with other entities on campus. We have a faculty member, again in the School of Linguistics, Daryl Lonsdale, who works with some faculty members in computer science as well as in statistics, and they have founded a natural language processing lab here at BYU in which they're using advanced machine learning, unsupervised learning on unstructured text to try to teach computers how to better understand and identify semantic patterns in all sorts of environments. Of course, English is important to them, but they're also working on some projects on European languages as well as Eastern languages. They're doing a very large project on trying to teach machines to understand ancient Syriac. And are making some really interesting progress with that, and are keen on having students who are studying the language from the humanities point of view work with them so that you can have the qualitative and the quantitative, again, at that intersection. Okay. And there are many other things that we're starting to talk about here amongst our faculty. There are some faculty who are interested in digital scholarship and social scholarship and what that might mean both for them as well as for students who they're teaching in their classes. There are faculty members who are interested in digital rhetoric. There's a lot of interest in looking at media, discourses, and transnarrativity, cultural implications of how technology and narrative might need to be rethunk as media itself begins to change and continues to evolve. A lot of interest in text analysis and distant reading, again, both for literary as well as for linguistic studies. And so if anyone ever has any interest in any of these fields, I'm more than happy to talk to you, but we're hoping that we're going to see more of this type of work at BYU as the digital humanities continue to grow and as our focus on it continues to grow here at BYU. That's a great question. Distant reading, it's a phrase that was coined by a fellow out of Stanford, Franco Moretti, where in opposition to close reading, when you take a text and you read it at a very granular level and you're interested in each individual word, what the words mean and how those kind of add up to the whole, that's close reading. Distant reading would be, rather than taking a single text, you take 500 texts and you let a computer go through and analyze features, whether it's word length or sentence length or syntax, and visualize it in such a way that you can then see patterns you wouldn't have noticed by doing the close reading. And the close reading and distant reading need to work together to help us really better understand how language and how literature works. So, do you have any examples of that? I do. In fact, after I really don't want to hold you guys up for lunch, so, but afterwards, you sure? Yeah. Okay, let me. Well, no, maybe afterwards I'll come back to that. That's a question that we'll come back to that. Yeah, there are lots of examples. In fact, we held a workshop last fall where we invited a fellow who came out from Stanford to talk about some of the work that they're doing in the field of distant reading, and we've got faculty here who are starting to get interested in that as well. So yeah, we'll come back to that. So the next kind of the second pillar though that I wanted to talk about that is very big here at BYU. I mentioned that when I started, I was able to participate in an academic minor that we call Computers in the Humanities. We've recently revamped that, and this is housed out of our office in consultation with the Dean's office. We've now recreated our academic minor, and we've called it Digital Humanities and Technology. But what's really important is to point out that when we call it that, we're talking about digital humanities as well as humanities technology. We're talking about a conceptual and the intersection of the conceptual and the practical. or the theoretical and the applied. So rather than trying to teach our students to be baseball commentators, like we might be ourselves as scholars, we're trying to teach them to get out there and actually do it themselves. And so we do have the ability to go back and look as we talked about our assessment of what students were doing in this academic minor before we made some of the changes. We would get comments like these. CHUM students, computers in the humanities students are very successful at completing projects similar to those used as demos, but they struggle with application to new problems. Now, of course, the environment here was the things we were teaching in our classes, but you could say that about students anywhere in the humanities. They often don't make connections to the work that they're doing in other classes. They sometimes struggle to grasp the underlying principles of technology tools. CHUM students do some wonderful work, but it usually exists in a box. They often take the classes because they think it'll make them more marketable, but I fear we aren't equipping them to see how our courses can provide complement or express that complement to others as they start to tell their stories. And Scott went into great detail yesterday about what it really means to enable and empower our students to be able to tell their stories. And so as we've reworked our digital humanities and technology program, we've revamped the path that students have to go through in order to earn this academic minor. And they're now taking both conceptual classes, such as Introduction to Text Analysis, Digital Humanities Research, Geospatial Humanities, together with some of the practical classes, such as print or web publishing, database design and programming, or technology localization. They're able to complement the technical skills together with the critical approaches that they may be taking in some of their other classes. We try to get our students very much involved in internships. I think you guys heard about some of the Humanities Plus initiatives, and our field is really primed for that because we do have that kind of natural tendency towards it. And so we've had students, for example, who have taken our classes and have gone on an internship creating websites for places like the Haiti Health Initiative, or working with publishing houses in doing social media marketing. We had a student who this wasn't an internship, he actually got a job in the oil and gas industry doing text analysis for them based on both his humanities as well as his CHUM background. And we're trying to develop other pedagogical tools to complement our academic minor as well. We're creating a whole series, and this is a kind of a tradition, creating digital humanities informed software. And I'd love to talk to you more about some of that as well. Automated, I think Harold has mentioned automated speech pronunciation a couple of times in conversations with people that we're working on, and multimedia annotation tools that we're building. We're doing some work with video conferencing classes. We have a Turkish class that's taught every semester where we have students housed here, and we're using a variety of online conferencing tools so that other students who are participating as full students in the classes can be remote but still participate as if they were present. And if we've got time, maybe later or after lunch, or even if you just want to stop by, we can show you some of our video conferencing rooms, some of our technology-enhanced classrooms that we've built, and again, a whole series of pedagogical tools that we're adding in. Ultimately, what it comes down to, though, in looking at the way that the digital humanities is currently implemented at BYU, we're very much invested in the ways that Humanities Plus can affect not only our students but also our faculty as well. It's taking these intersections of things like humanities, things like computer science, social media, information technology, education, and so forth, and start to build the types of things that are going to continue to make the humanities as important as they have traditionally been in the world where we're all digital natives, or those who are coming after us themselves are also digital natives. So that's what I have for you.